Hello, I'm giving this talk in place of somebody else. I've given this talk before at another symposium, so I just adjusted it slightly. I want you to look at this and the kind of things that we're thinking about when we talk about conservation and sustainable resource use. On the left, you see a typical European or developed society approach. And we have very segregated agriculture, forestry, conservation, and other kind of developments, separate from one another. If I go to the African society, you have a very much an integrated approach. We actually do agriculture, forestry, conservation on the same piece of land. And we have a lot of judgment about the different sides. The question is, whose criteria are we using? What kind of criteria and whose are we using? I'm going to try to bring this back in terms of the Miombo woodlands that goes from Mozambique up to Tanzania, where we work. When you look at the bottom, these could be all part of the same system that you need to manage properly to maintain the diversity, maintain productivity in the system. That's a Miombo woodland. The dark green is the wetter Miombo woodland, the light green is the drier Miombo woodland. You can see it covers a wide area, has a wide range of southern Africa. The important thing is it's seasonally dry with long dry seasons, so we have fires. We have adaptations to browsing, and I include fire as a non-selective browser as a main disturbance factor. And then we have most species are light demanding, and that's what people often don't think about. And that's really important to think about that. If you think about this area, the areas around the tropical moist forests are the most populated areas in Africa, and that's where the most rapid growth in African populations are. So we have major problems with resource use in these areas. So what are people using? A lot of people, subsistence use, they use construction material for houses, fences, they use firewood, they use medicinal plants, and many other things. Some of that goes commercial, and there are different levels of commercial utilization of resources. If you look there, see how people carry firewood for a long distance on a bicycle, and it could also be charcoal. Like this, in Mozambique, you find they'll have 3 to 5 bags of charcoal on a bicycle going to sell it. My focus is more in terms of that. We need to move from that part to this part, helping people to make some benefit from the resources they use. But along with this, there's a lot of perceptions about degradation of resources. We see most people see the arrow goes from left to right in this picture, from forested areas to non-forested areas. And the reason for that is, like what we do, like what they do in Europe and other developed societies, they create cropland, they need construction material, they need all of those kind of daily needs. The same in this kind of rural societies, they need those kind of things. So we have to accept some kind of change in the system. However, in these areas, the change is not one direction, it's a cyclical change. And I'll show you how we work with that. The perception also that we have is that the village and the crop fields as the only part of resource use area of people in that village. But we forget that that's the resource use area. And in this list, you need to add the construction material and the firewood also, because a lot of that comes from this area. What we then do, what governments then do, is they hand out these areas to all sort of big companies for all sort of different uses, for economic development elsewhere, not in the area. And that puts a lot of people on they marginalize them, and there's bigger pressure on the resources. Then we came with all sort of ways of trying to rectify this thing. One of this is climate change mitigation through REDD+. REDD+ means reduce emission from deforestation and degradation, and they try to apply it in these woodlands. My question is, when do we have degradation and when we have deforestation? I say we don't have it. except for degradation of stand structure. But I'll come back to that. So what we try to do, we condemn traditional slash and burn agriculture, charcoal production. We promote some job creation through these big commercial ventures, and we promote single tree timber harvesting, and we promote protection. And I think we all missed the point in that. So just to repeat some of this, and while we're doing it, we don't understand the needs of people, the capacity to manage resources, and their traditional knowledge systems. We don't know that. And we don't understand the systems as they function. And we try to make all these things to make it better. We remove the important disturbance factors from the system, like fire. We remove resource use practices from there, which are very essential in terms of certain dynamics in the system. We introduce a lot of other species that we don't, the locals don't use it, and it's very few species compared to the diversity of species they use in the normal systems. And then we have this climate change thing. Okay, how does the system function? This is typical in Miombo woodland. Most trees, species, have a rootstock from where they sprout. And these are common commercial timber species in the area. That is what people consider as degraded or deforested. This is actually the most diverse and most productive part of the system. And they clear it for growing into agriculture, going into forestry, and things like that. That's a typical slash and burn site. In the top left, you have a lot of seedlings, what appear like seedlings, but if you start to scratch the soil around them, you find a rootstock. What do people then do? They clear it, they burn the site, they grow the crops. After a while, they abandon it. Then you have a regrowth from the rootstocks, and this stand is 10 years old. The seedlings in there is probably more than 10 years old. So you actually rejuvenate the system. That's a very healthy Miombo woodland area with all the stages in one area. If we look in the study that we did in Zambia, and we do follow up and studies in Mozambique, just look at the right-hand corner and think what I said before. What looks good, that undisturbed woodland. In terms of harvesting, single tree harvesting, you have the lowest diversity, species richness. If you go to slash and burn agriculture and charcoal production, which everybody thinks is terrible, and I also think so in some places, you have the highest diversity. If you go to the productivity side, if you travel through vast areas of secondary woodland in Mozambique, we stopped at this one place because of the oil palm and cashew nut. We know people lived there. How long ago they left there? 7 years ago. So what we then did is to cut that smaller stem growing there, and that's a growth rate, fast growth. We go in the back, which is 7 years old, that's the size of the trees. We go to the other side, it's 10 years old. We can still see the mounds where people grow their crops. If we go in another area, this is one area, the dense stand of regrowth. We go in there, we take not the best stem, but one of the two trees, we took one of the stems, the smaller one. That's the size there. I'm not sure if you can see it, but you can see clear growth rings. We went to another place, similar thing, exactly the same pattern. What you have is 1.4 centimeters diameter growth in an unmanaged stand. And we have done this in training with different places in the region where people in the training do this. And you can see the fast growth that you get there. In the study in Zambia, we looked at slash and burn and charcoal production. This is the mean growth diameter, no, the mean ring width. You have to double that to get the diameter growth. So it's more than 1 centimeter in a whole range of areas of growth, which is fast. If we then, I'm rushing a bit. If you look at mean annual increment of the stand in terms of volume, it's quite high, 8 to 12 cubic meters per hectare per year. In unmanaged stands, no management, no silviculture management, no thinning, no pruning. So the question is, can we reverse this process of what we perceive as cutting it down and turning it to that? Can we manage it the other way around? And in many areas you go, This is along one road, the very young stage, and all the stages to the mature stage. And if we think what people use, they use all those stages. If you look at the construction material they use in the village. Okay, so how can we then manage that? We looked at the productivity of these trees, and we started to think about selective pruning and thinning. Can we improve the stand condition and at the same time provide firewood and poles? That's a pruning thing. I don't want to go into details on that. What we then did is we developed the woodland, we categorized the woodlands in development stages. Stage 1 is below 2 meters height. And the only thing that we do there is selective pruning, get the stems formed better. And some of the poorer stems we cut. And that's where you can get fiber. At the moment there's a lot of degradation because of fiber collection for string. In the stage 2, which is 2 to 5 meters tall, we focus more on thinning because we have now started to do selective pruning and better stems. If we go to stage 3, which is 5 to 15 meters tall, we have a lot of poles that we can reduce pruning because the stems become too thick and we damage it too much. When it comes to the mature stage, we have to cut it because the trees are light demanding. We don't want to cut everything, so we say, okay, if the canopy height is, we take the canopy height as criterion and say 2 to 3 times the height of the canopy. That's the kind of gap you make because the trees are light demanding and you get good growth. Okay. In the training, we then try to do people say, okay, mark out a plot of 20 meters by 20 meters, and you apply this selective pruning and thinning, and that's the material they get. Just have a look at the size of stems that you get. That's a number of branches that we remove in each plot. That's the number of small poles we have removed. That is the number of better poles we left behind because we take out the bad ones and we prune the good ones to get better form. So we have a better woodland and we have actually used a lot of material. Now, a lot of this we did from what we see. And we've done a training on that. And now we started to do experiments to give scientists numbers, figures of how much they grow, how much you do. So now we do this. So we have the control treatment for conservationists. We say we should not cut. We have a control, 100% clearing like the locals do. And we have a control for the tobacco company I work for in that area in planting eucalypts. And we will compare this. And then we have the selective pruning and thinning. This is just to show you an example of the kind of material we get from a very early stage 1, and we do a control, 30% thinning, 50%, 70%, 100%. Now what you can see here demonstrates the light demand. I'm not sure if you can see it there, but in the back you see a light green. That's all a coppice regrowth you get from a clearfield, which you don't get in the 30% thinning in front. So there's a lot of things happening here which is very dynamic in the system, and we can manage that. Now that's a stage 2 kind of material. Stage 3, you can see what material we get from there. And we come to stage 4, we clear cut. So we have extensive areas of this in Miombo woodland. The old growth stands is like me, getting old. It's actually moribund systems. No regeneration in there, there's nothing going on there. And actually the big size is not good for many the users of people. The slash and burn agriculture and charcoal production, it's all a means of finding money. And the tobacco company has actually done that by growing tobacco in the outgrow scheme. Each farmer grows tobacco, or not all each farmer, but many farmers, 300,000 in the region between Mozambique and Tanzania, and they get an income, and only a small portion of the land they may grow tobacco. And so we help them to manage the woodland right. In the young stages, we're not clear felling, we are selectively taking it, so we help it to grow back. So we have all these diverse needs, it's in tune with ecological processes, we believe, and we give an income, and I believe that's where we're going to. Thanks.